Lena's alarm buzzed at 4 in the morning. The sound was sharp, but she didn't complain. She rubbed her eyes, reached for the small lamp beside her bed, and took a deep breath before getting up. Her tiny one-room house was quiet except for the faint sound of her son's breathing. He was still asleep, his face half hidden under a worn blanket. For a moment she just stood there watching him, smiling softly. Then she whispered, "Mama will be back before sunset, okay?" The floor was cold under her bare feet as she walked to the small kitchen corner. She boiled water for tea and folded the same old apron she wore every day. Her life followed the same rhythm: early mornings, long hours, and tired evenings. Yet she was grateful. Having work meant she could buy her son's medicine. Having work meant hope. By 5, she was already walking down the dusty road to the bus stop, carrying her old handbag and lunch wrapped in newspaper. The bus ride took nearly an hour, through winding streets that led to another world, the part of the city where people lived behind tall gates, where the air smelled of fresh flowers and expensive cars hummed past quietly. When the bus stopped near the long driveway of the Hamilton estate, Lena stepped off carefully. She adjusted her scarf, checked that her uniform was neat, and took a deep breath. The mansion stood tall and proud, with glass walls that reflected the sunrise. She'd worked there for 3 years now, yet the sight still made her pause for a second every morning. She rang the back doorbell, and one of the other maids, Clara, opened with a sleepy grin. "You're early again," Clara said. "I like starting before everyone wakes up," Lena smiled, slipping inside. She placed her things in the staff room, put on gloves, and started her daily routine, dusting the long corridors, wiping the marble floors, polishing the furniture that no one really touched. Every corner of the house was spotless, yet she cleaned it as if it carried her own name. By 7, the family began to stir. She could hear the sound of footsteps upstairs and the clinking of dishes in the kitchen. The air filled with the smell of coffee and toast. Lena moved quietly toward the large dining room, setting the table. She didn't speak much, but her movements were gentle and sure. Then she saw her, the little girl, Chloe, walking in wearing her pink robe, her hair messy from sleep. She was around 9, with bright eyes that often looked sad. "Good morning, Miss Chloe," Lena said softly. "Good morning, Lena," the girl replied in a sleepy voice, rubbing her eyes. "Would you like honey on your toast?" Chloe nodded and sat down. There were other maids nearby, but she always waited for Lena to serve her. When Lena placed the plate before her, Chloe smiled shyly. "Thank you," she whispered. Lena smiled back. "You're welcome, sweetheart." She went on cleaning while the girl ate quietly. Mr. Hamilton wasn't home that morning. He had left early for a business trip the night before. That meant the house was calm. The atmosphere was lighter whenever he wasn't there, not because he was cruel, but because he was strict. He expected perfection in everything: his company, his staff, and even his home. Lena respected him deeply, though she often felt invisible in his presence. He rarely spoke to the maids except to give instructions, and even then his voice carried an authority that made everyone stand straighter. But she understood people like him. They carried too much weight on their shoulders. After breakfast, Chloe followed Lena around the house, asking questions about cleaning and cooking. "Why do you work so much?" she asked one morning, tilting her head. Lena smiled, thinking for a moment. "Because when I work, my son can go to school and eat good food," she said softly. "You have a son?" "Yes, he's a bit younger than you." "Does he have toys?" Lena laughed gently. "Not many, but he has imagination. He makes toys from boxes and bottles," Chloe giggled. "That's smart." Those small talks became part of Lena's days. She never intended to get close to her boss's daughter, but Chloe's innocence melted her guard. The little girl would follow her around, sometimes hiding behind curtains when her tutors came, begging Lena to tell her stories instead of attending lessons. One afternoon, while Lena was folding laundry, Chloe sat on the carpet nearby and said suddenly, "I wish my daddy smiled more." Lena stopped folding and looked at her. "He works a lot, sweetheart. He loves you very much." "I know," Chloe said quietly, "but sometimes I think he loves his phone more." The words made Lena's heart ache. She wanted to hug the child, but she didn't dare. She simply said, "Grown-ups have strange ways of showing love. But deep down, your father's heart beats for you." Chloe smiled faintly and went back to her drawing. The days went on like that, quiet, predictable, and yet filled with small moments that gave Lena strength. But life has a way of changing without warning. One afternoon, while cleaning the study, Lena overheard two security guards talking outside the window. Their voices were low, but curiosity made her pause. "Did you hear what the boss said?" one guard whispered. "Yeah, some business rival's been sending threats. Something about getting revenge." "Revenge?" "Yeah, they mentioned his daughter. The boss told us to stay alert, but you know how he is. He thinks money can fix everything." Lena's hand froze on the cloth she was using to dust the bookshelf. Her heart began to beat faster. She leaned closer to the window, trying to hear more, but they had already walked away. The rest of the day she felt uneasy. She kept checking on Chloe, making sure she was safe. Every noise made her tense. She wanted to tell Mr. Hamilton what she heard, but she was afraid. What if he thought she was gossiping? What if he fired her? She couldn't risk losing this job. Her son's medicine depended on it. That night, when the house was quiet, she sat alone in the staff quarters, staring at the wall. She could still hear those words echoing in her mind. They mentioned his daughter. She whispered to herself, "Maybe it's nothing. Maybe they were exaggerating." But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. The next few days passed in anxious silence. Lena tried to stay calm, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was coming. She became more watchful. Whenever Chloe played in the garden, Lena stayed near the window, pretending to clean. Mr. Hamilton returned from his trip that weekend. The house became busy again. Meetings, calls, guests. He looked tired but focused, as always. When Lena served him coffee, he barely looked up. "Thank you," he muttered, typing on his laptop. She wanted to say something to warn him, but her courage failed. She walked out quietly, carrying the empty tray, wishing she had spoken. Later that evening, she saw him walking with Chloe in the garden. It was rare to see them together like that. Chloe was laughing as she ran ahead of him, and for the first time in a long while, Mr. Hamilton smiled. Lena stood by the window watching, a small tear forming in her eye. That moment gave her hope that maybe everything would be fine. Maybe the danger had passed. She wanted to believe that, but fate had other plans. The next morning started like any other. The sun was bright, birds chirped, and Lena was sweeping the front porch. She noticed the driver washing one of the cars and waved politely. He nodded back. Chloe was inside, playing with her dollhouse. Everything felt normal. Then the phone rang inside the house. One of the maids answered and called out. "Mr. Hamilton left early for his meeting. He said he'll be back before noon." Lena nodded, continuing her work. She didn't notice the car engine starting behind the garage, or the faint smell of gasoline drifting through the air. She only noticed when she heard it, a sharp, terrified scream from the backyard. Her broom dropped instantly. She ran. Through the glass doors, she saw smoke rising near the side gate. Her heart raced. Chloe's voice came from somewhere beyond the bushes. Without thinking, Lena dashed toward the sound, shouting her name. But that is where the day her quiet world shattered truly began. A day that would test her courage, her faith, and everything she believed about right and wrong. She didn't know it yet, but in the next few minutes, she would make a choice that would change all their lives forever. The scream tore through the quiet morning air, sharp and desperate. Lena's heart nearly stopped. She ran across the garden, her slippers slipping on the wet grass. The smoke was growing thicker near the garage, curling up into the bright sky. "Chloe," she cried out, her voice breaking. There was no answer, only coughing and another frightened sob. Lena's chest tightened. She pushed through the bushes and saw the small car near the far end of the yard, the one Chloe sometimes sat in when she played. Now thick black smoke was spilling out from under the hood. "Help!" the child's voice cried from inside. Lena froze for a second, unable to breathe. Her eyes darted around. Where were the guards? The driver, anyone? The mansion, usually buzzing with staff, was eerily empty. Panic rose in her throat, but she forced herself to move. She tried the side gate, but it was locked. She banged on it, shouting for help, but no one came. The heat was growing stronger, the smoke thicker. She could see Chloe through the car window, her small hands banging on the glass, her face red from the fumes. "Stay still, baby." "Don't move!" Lena yelled, coughing as she covered her mouth with her apron. She turned back toward the mansion, ready to run inside for help, but something caught her eye. Mr. Hamilton's red Ferrari, shining under the morning sun, parked just a few meters away near the entrance. Her mind spun wildly. The guards kept the main keys near the front door whenever Mr. Hamilton wasn't home. She'd seen it countless times while cleaning. Her instincts screamed for her to wait, to find someone else. But another cough from the car made her decision for her. She sprinted toward the front door, her hands trembling as she reached for the key hook. The key was there, gleaming like a dare. She hesitated for a second, her heart racing, then grabbed it and ran back out. Her feet pounded against the pavement as she reached the Ferrari. Her reflection flashed across the red paint, dust on her apron, fear in her eyes, hair clinging to her face. She'd never even touched this car before. Now she was about to do something she never imagined. "Please, God, let it start," she whispered. The engine roared to life instantly, a powerful growl that made her flinch. She slammed her foot on the pedal, feeling the car jerk forward. She wasn't a skilled driver. She had driven an old broken car years ago in her village, but her hands remembered enough. The guards appeared just then, shouting in shock as she sped toward the side gate. They must have seen only one thing: a maid stealing the boss's prized Ferrari. "Stop her," one of them yelled, running after her, but Lena didn't stop. Her eyes were locked on the smoke ahead. The gate blocked her way and she hit the horn hard. No one opened it, so she did the only thing she could. She pressed the pedal all the way down. The car lurched forward, crashing through the gate with a deafening noise. Metal scraped against metal. The sound tore through her ears, but she didn't care. She stopped the car beside the burning one, jumped out and ran to the door where Chloe was trapped. The heat was unbearable now. She wrapped her hands in her apron and tried to pull the handle, but it was too hot. The little girl was crying, gasping for air. Lena looked around and spotted a small rock near her foot. She picked it up and smashed the window with all her strength. The glass shattered, cutting her wrist, but she didn't feel the pain. She reached inside and pulled Chloe out. "Come, baby, come," she said, coughing. She lifted the child into her arms and ran away from the smoke. Behind them, the fire crackled and grew louder, but she didn't look back. She just kept running until her knees gave out. By the time she stopped, both of them were coughing hard. Lena held Chloe tightly against her chest, whispering, "You're okay. You're safe now." The guards finally caught up, their faces full of confusion. One of them shouted, "What did you do?" Lena couldn't answer. She was too weak, her hands shaking from shock. She looked down at the little girl who clung to her, crying softly. A moment later, sirens filled the air. The police and ambulance arrived. The driver appeared out of nowhere, shouting explanations, and within minutes, chaos surrounded them, flashing lights, people yelling, smoke rising higher into the sky. When Mr. Hamilton's car pulled up, Lena's heart sank. He jumped out, still wearing his office suit, his face pale and panicked. His eyes went straight to Chloe, who was now sitting on a stretcher, covered in a blanket. "Chloe," he shouted, running toward her. "Daddy," she cried, reaching out. He scooped her into his arms, checking every inch of her. She was safe, just shaken. Relief washed over his face. Then his expression hardened when he turned toward Lena. "What happened?" he demanded. One of the guards spoke quickly. "Sir, she took your Ferrari. She broke the gate." Lena's heart dropped. She tried to speak, her voice shaking. "Sir, please, But he cut her off, his voice rising. "You stole my car? You crashed it? What were you thinking?" People around them fell silent. Even the paramedics froze for a moment. Lena's lips trembled. I only wanted to help." "The child, help?" His tone was sharp. "You could have killed her." Tears welled up in her eyes. "No, sir, the car near the gate, it caught fire." "She was inside and no one was there. I didn't know what else to do." "Enough," he snapped, running a hand through his hair. "You broke my gate, destroyed my car, and put my daughter at risk. You had no right." Lena tried to step closer, but one of the guards held her back. "Please believe me, sir," she pleaded. She was trapped. "Save your stories for the police," he said coldly. Her breath caught. "The police?" "Yes," he said, gesturing toward the officers who were already nearby. "If you're innocent, you'll explain it there." The officers looked uneasy, unsure how to proceed. They had seen the fire, the child, the broken gate, but they followed the billionaire's words. They asked Lena to come with them for questioning. Chloe, sitting on the stretcher, suddenly screamed, "No! She saved me! Daddy, don't!" Her father turned to her, his expression softening slightly. "It's okay, sweetheart. Let them talk to her." But Chloe shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "She saved me. The other car was on fire. I was stuck." Lena looked at the girl, her own tears falling now. "It's all right, sweetheart. I'll be fine." The officers led her gently to their car. She didn't resist. As she sat inside, she watched through the window as Mr. Hamilton hugged his daughter tightly, surrounded by flashing cameras. That night, the story spread fast. Someone had recorded a short clip, the Ferrari crashing through the gate, the maid covered in smoke, the billionaire yelling. By evening, social media was full of headlines. Maid steals billionaire's Ferrari. Caught red-handed. Poor worker destroys luxury car. No one knew the real story. At the police station, Lena sat alone on a bench, her clothes stained with soot and her hands shaking. The officer who took her statement seemed kind but uncertain. "You're saying you did this to save the child?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, sir." She was trapped. "I didn't think, I just acted," he sighed. "It's hard to believe someone would take that kind of risk." Lena smiled faintly, her voice barely a whisper. "When you see a child in danger, you don't think about risk." He didn't answer. He just wrote something on his clipboard and walked away. Hours passed. She sat there staring at the floor, her thoughts circling around her son at home. Would anyone feed him? Would he be scared? Her eyes blurred with tears. Outside reporters were gathering. The news had twisted everything. To them, she was a thief, a poor woman caught in the act. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Chloe was safe in bed, holding her blanket tightly. She kept repeating, "She saved me, Daddy. She saved me, Mister." The rain started to fall just as midnight passed. Lena sat alone on a wooden bench in the corner of the police station, her clothes still smelling faintly of smoke. Her fingers were red and swollen from where the glass had cut her earlier. She hadn't eaten anything since morning, but hunger was the last thing on her mind. Her thoughts were only about two things: her son and the little girl she had saved. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the fire again. The heat, the smoke, the child's scream. Then she saw Mr. Hamilton's angry face and heard his words echoing, "You had no right." Those words cut deeper than anything. She had done the right thing, yet somehow it had turned into a mistake. An officer walked by and glanced at her. He seemed tired. "You can rest there for a bit. We'll call you if we need anything else," he said. She nodded politely, whispering, "Thank you." She had tried to explain everything during questioning, but she could see the doubt in their eyes. Who would believe that a maid had taken a billionaire's Ferrari not to steal it, but to save his daughter? It sounded unbelievable. She had no lawyer, no one to speak for her. Outside, the rain grew heavier, tapping against the window like a clock ticking away the hours of her hope. Back at the mansion, Mr. Hamilton sat in his study, the room dimly lit by the glow of the screen in front of him. He had watched the CCTV footage again and again, each time feeling the same cold wave of guilt wash over him. Every frame told the truth. The maid had acted out of pure courage. There was no hesitation, no greed, only fear and determination in her eyes. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. For years, he had prided himself on being a man of logic and power. He believed money could buy loyalty, safety, and peace. But tonight, all his wealth felt small compared to the bravery of a woman who owned almost nothing. The phone buzzed on his desk, snapping him out of thought. It was the hospital calling to confirm that Chloe was stable and asleep. Relief softened his face, but guilt quickly replaced it. He had yelled at the woman who had saved his child's life. He stood up suddenly, grabbed his coat, and headed out into the rain. When he arrived at the police station, the officers straightened up immediately. One of them recognized him and said, "Good evening, sir. We didn't expect you this late." "I'm here about the woman you brought in earlier," he said firmly. "The one accused of taking my car." "Yes, sir," the officer replied carefully. "She's still here. We were waiting for further instructions from your office." He nodded, jaw tight. "I'd like to see her." The officer hesitated for a moment before leading him to the back room. Lena was sitting there staring at her hands. When she heard the door open, she looked up slowly. The moment her eyes met his, she froze. Mr. Hamilton stepped closer, but for once his usual confidence was gone. He looked tired, his expensive suit damp from the rain. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with everything that had gone wrong that day. Finally, he said quietly, "You saved my daughter?" Lena blinked, unsure if she had heard right. "Sir?" He took a deep breath. "I saw the footage. I know what really happened. You risked your life for her, and I judged you without listening." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she said nothing. She just stared at him, her lips trembling. "I'm sorry," he continued, his voice low and rough. "You didn't deserve what I said or what happened after." For a moment, she didn't move. Then she shook her head gently. "You were afraid, sir. Any parent would be. You thought I hurt her." Her calmness humbled him even more. "Still," he said, "I was wrong." He turned toward the officers. "Please release her immediately. She's done nothing wrong." The officers exchanged quick looks and nodded. One of them said, "Of course, sir." Lena stood up slowly, still unsure if this was real. Mr. Hamilton reached into his pocket and took out a small handkerchief. He offered it to her awkwardly. "You're bleeding," he said softly. She looked down at her wrist and realized it had started bleeding again from the earlier cut. She took the handkerchief carefully. "Thank you." As they walked out of the station together, the cool rain hit their faces. He held his umbrella over her without saying anything. They reached his car, another one, not the damaged Ferrari, and sat inside quietly. The drive back was silent at first. The city lights blurred on the wet windshield. Lena finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry about the car, sir. I didn't mean to—" "Don't," he interrupted gently. "You don't have to apologize for saving my daughter." She looked out the window, blinking back tears. "I just couldn't watch her get hurt. I didn't think. I just drove." He nodded slowly. "And I'm grateful you did." When they reached her small neighborhood, the rain had turned into a drizzle. The streets were dark, quiet except for the sound of water dripping from rooftops. She pointed to a small house at the end of the lane. "That's mine," she said softly. He parked in front of it. Before she could open the door, he said, "Wait." She turned to face him. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I'll make sure the world knows what really happened. You don't deserve the things they're saying about you." Her eyes widened slightly. "People are saying things?" He sighed. "The media twisted it. They called you a thief. They don't know the truth yet." She looked down, her heart heavy. "It doesn't matter what they say. As long as she's safe, that's enough for me." He stared at her, astonished. No anger, no bitterness, only kindness. For the first time in a long while, he was speechless. When she stepped out of the car, her son came running out of the house, shouting, "Mama!" He threw his arms around her waist. She bent down, hugging him tightly, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. Mr. Hamilton sat there, watching the scene quietly. The warmth of that embrace hit him harder than anything. He had everything: cars, money, power. But he realized he had never known the kind of love that poor woman carried in her heart. As he drove away, he couldn't stop thinking about her words. "As long as she's safe, that's enough for me." The next morning, the headlines changed. A new video surfaced, the full footage from the mansion's cameras. It showed the truth: Lena rushing to save Chloe, breaking the glass, pulling her out moments before the flames grew. The story flipped overnight. News anchors called her a hero. People flooded social media with praise. Mr. Hamilton's company issued a public statement clearing her name, and reporters camped outside her small home, trying to get interviews. But Lena avoided all of it. She didn't want fame. She didn't want pity. She only wanted her quiet life back. That afternoon, Mr. Hamilton visited again, this time not as a boss, but as a man carrying gratitude. He brought flowers and a small box of medicine for her son. "These are for him," he said gently. She tried to refuse. "Sir, you've already done enough." He shook his head. "Not nearly enough. I owe you everything." Her son looked up at him curiously and asked, "Are you the man from Mama's work?" He smiled faintly. "Yes, I am." The boy nodded and ran inside to show his toys, leaving the two adults alone. Lena said quietly, "You didn't have to come here." "I wanted to," he replied. "There's something I need to tell you. Watching that video, it made me realize how blind I've been. You risked your life for my daughter. While I judged you by where you come from, I can't undo what I said, but I can change what happens next." She frowned slightly, unsure what he meant. "I want you to come back to work," he said. "Not as a maid, but as part of our household staff, someone I trust completely. And I'll make sure your son's school fees and medical care are covered." Lena was speechless. "Sir, I can't accept." "You can," he said gently. "Because it's not charity. It's gratitude." Her eyes filled with tears again. She looked down, trying to steady her voice. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." He smiled softly. Just say you'll keep being yourself. That's more than enough. That evening, when he returned home, Chloe ran to him with a drawing in her hands. It showed 3 people, her father, and Lena, holding hands under a bright sun. At the top, she had written in big letters, "My heroes." He looked at it for a long time, then hugged his daughter tightly. "You're right," he whispered. "She is a hero." And for the first time in years, a sense of peace filled his heart. He had spent a lifetime building walls of success around himself. But one act of courage from a poor woman had torn those walls down, showing him what truly mattered. Hamilton sat beside her, his face pale. He stroked her hair and whispered, "Rest, my love. We'll sort this out." But later, when everyone was asleep, he sat alone in his study. Something didn't sit right in his chest. His daughter's words kept echoing in his mind. "She saved me." He opened his laptop and pulled up the mansion's security footage. The video began to play silently, the smoke rising, Lena running, grabbing the keys, jumping into the Ferrari, crashing through the gate. He leaned closer. Every frame told a story he hadn't seen before. The fear on her face, the determination, the moment she broke the window and pulled his daughter out. He froze, his throat tightening. The truth stared back at him. Undeniable and raw, he had accused the wrong person, and the woman sitting in a cold police station wasn't a thief. She was the one who had risked everything to save his only child. The next few weeks changed everything for both Lena and Mr. Hamilton. Word spread across the city about the poor maid who had risked her life to save a billionaire's daughter. Reporters kept trying to find her, but she avoided them, spending her days quietly between home and work. Mr. Hamilton had kept his promise. He gave her a new position, one that came with better pay, shorter hours, and most importantly, respect. She was still humble as ever, always speaking softly, always helping wherever she could, but there was a quiet strength in her now that people noticed. She walked a little taller. Her eyes no longer carried the same fear of being judged. One morning, as she arrived at the mansion, Mr. Hamilton greeted her at the gate. That alone surprised her. He had never waited for anyone like that before. "Good morning, Lena," he said with a smile. She nodded politely. "Good morning, sir." "I was thinking," he said as they walked inside, "you've done so much for us. I want you to take the next few days off. There's something I want you to see." She frowned, unsure. "Something to see?" He smiled slightly. "Yes, it's a surprise." She didn't know what he meant, but she trusted him now. A few hours later, a car arrived at her small house. The driver handed her a sealed envelope with her name neatly written on it. Inside, there were 2 tickets and a short note. "For you and your son. Be ready by morning." When she showed it to her son, his eyes lit up. "Where are we going, Mama?" "I don't know," she said with a small smile. "But I guess we'll find out." The next morning, the car picked them up early and drove them to the outskirts of the city. As the roads grew quieter and trees appeared on both sides, Lena felt nervous. She wasn't used to surprises. She kept glancing at her son, who sat by the window, wide-eyed with excitement. Finally, the car stopped in front of a small but beautiful 2-story house painted in soft cream and surrounded by green plants. Mr. Hamilton was standing near the gate, smiling as they stepped out. Her son ran up to him. "Is this your house?" he asked. Mr. Hamilton chuckled. "No, it's yours." Lena froze. "What do you mean?" He turned to her, his tone serious but gentle. "I've been thinking a lot since that night. You saved my daughter without thinking of your own safety. You didn't ask for anything in return. But I can't keep living knowing that you and your son sleep in a place that leaks when it rains. You deserve better." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. "Sir, I can't accept this," she said, shaking her head. He smiled. "You already have. It's yours. No more rent, no more worry. It's fully paid for." Her son ran up the steps shouting, "Mama, look. There's a garden." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Sir, this is too much." "I'm just a maid," he interrupted softly. "No, you're not. You're family now." That sentence hit her harder than anything else. No one had ever said something like that to her before. She pressed her hands together, her voice trembling. "I don't know what to say." "Just promise me one thing," he said gently. "Keep being the person you are. The world needs more people like you." She nodded, unable to stop the tears that rolled down her face. As the days passed, she began settling into her new home. Her son was happier than ever. He finally had his own bed, his own books, and even a small space to paint. Every time she looked at him, she silently thanked the heavens for giving them a second chance. At the mansion, things had changed too. Mr. Hami. Elton wasn't the same man he used to be. He spent more time with his daughter, taking her to the park, helping her with homework, and reading bedtime stories. The once distant and busy man had softened. His staff noticed it. His daughter noticed it most of all. One evening, Lena came to the mansion to drop off some documents. She saw Mr. Hamilton sitting on the grass with Chloe, laughing as they played a small board game. For a moment, she just stood there, smiling quietly. When he noticed her, he waved. "Lena, come join us," she shook her head. "I don't want to interrupt." "You're not interrupting," he said. "You're part of this now." She hesitated but walked over. Chloe immediately ran up and hugged her. "I missed you," the little girl said. Lena smiled and hugged her back. "I missed you too." As the sun began to set, the three of them sat there together, talking about everything and nothing. Mr. Hamilton told stories from his childhood, and Lena shared funny moments from her village. Laughter filled the air, soft and warm. It didn't feel like a rich man and his employee anymore. It felt like a small, imperfect but beautiful family. Later that night, after Lena had gone home, Mr. Hamilton stood by his daughter's bedside, watching her sleep. He thought about how much had changed in such a short time. He realized that all the success he had once been proud of had meant nothing compared to this peace he now felt. The next morning, he made a decision that surprised everyone. He called a meeting with his staff and said, "From today, I want every person here to be treated with full respect. Titles don't matter. Humanity does." No one expected those words from him, but Lena's story had changed him deeply. In the weeks that followed, Mr. Hamilton began a small foundation in Lena's name. Its goal was simple: to help single mothers working in domestic jobs find education and housing support. When he told Lena about it, she couldn't believe it. "Sir, why my name?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. He smiled. "Because you inspired it, and because your courage deserves to be remembered." Her son proudly told his schoolteacher about it, saying, "My mama's a hero." Life began to take a rhythm again, but this time with joy and gratitude replacing struggle and fear. Lena often visited the mansion with home-cooked meals, which even Mr. Hamilton's chef secretly looked forward to. She would laugh and say, "It's just soup," but everyone agreed it tasted like comfort. One evening, during a family gathering at the mansion, someone mentioned the incident again: the fire, the Ferrari, the rescue. The guests were curious, asking how she had managed to drive such a fast car. She smiled shyly. "I didn't even know how to start it. I just turned the key and prayed." Everyone laughed, but behind the laughter there was deep admiration. After dinner, Mr. Hamilton stood up to make a small toast. "I used to believe that people were measured by their success," he said. "But I was wrong. The real measure is kindness. And sitting here is the woman who reminded me of that." He raised his glass toward her. Everyone clapped, and Lena looked down, blushing. That night, as she walked home under the stars with her son, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. She didn't have to worry about tomorrow anymore. She had a roof, a job, and people who truly valued her. Her son slipped his small hand into hers and said, "Mama, do you think Mr. Hamilton is our friend now?" She smiled softly. "Yes, my dear. He's not just a friend, he's family." Months passed, and the bond between their families grew stronger. They celebrated holidays together, shared meals, and supported one another. Chloe often visited Lena's home, playing in the garden while Lena watched from the porch with a warm smile. One day, Mr. Hamilton came by unexpectedly. He looked thoughtful, almost emotional. "Lena," he said, "I've been offered a chance to open a new branch overseas. But before I decide, I want to ask something. Would you come with us? You know Chloe trusts you more than anyone." She was surprised. "Me, to another country?" He nodded. "Yes. You'd have your own house there, and your son would attend a good school. But more than that, I can't imagine Chloe being without you." She thought for a moment, looking at her son who was playing nearby. "If it means a better life for him, then yes." "I'll go." His face lit up with relief. "Thank you. I promise you'll never regret it." As he left that evening, Lena stood by the gate watching the sunset. Life had taken her from the lowest point, a poor maid accused of theft, to a woman respected and loved. She whispered to herself, Maybe God really does see every tear we cry. And for the first time, she believed it. The morning they left for the airport was quiet. The sky was pale blue and the air carried that mix of excitement and sadness that comes with new beginnings. Lena stood outside her little house, holding her son's hand, looking around at the place that had once been her whole world. It felt strange to leave it behind. That house had seen her tears, her prayers, her laughter, and her second chance at life. She touched the gate gently as if saying goodbye to an old friend. Her son tugged at her hand. "Mama, are you sad?" She smiled softly. "A little, but it's a happy kind of sad. We're going somewhere new." The car that came to pick them up was the same sleek black one that used to feel out of place on her street. Now it just felt familiar. When they reached the airport, Mr. Hamilton and Chloe were already waiting. Chloe ran up to Lena and hugged her tightly. "You really came," she said, grinning. "Of course," Lena said, laughing. "You think I'd let you travel without me?" The plane ride was long, but to her son it felt like an adventure. He pressed his face to the window, pointing at the clouds. "Mama, look! It's like cotton," she smiled, watching his joy. It made the fear of the unknown a little easier to bear. When they landed, everything looked different, the people, the air, even the colors. The city was bright and clean, full of tall buildings and quiet streets. The company had arranged a new house for Mr. Hamilton's family, and next to it, a smaller but beautiful home for Lena and her son. When she stepped inside, she froze. The walls were freshly painted, the kitchen sparkled, and in the corner sat a brand new sewing machine. Beside it was a small note in Mr. Hamilton's handwriting, "For your new beginning." Her hands trembled as she read it. For a long time she just stood there, tears in her eyes, overwhelmed by gratitude. Life abroad was different, but in a peaceful way. There were no gossiping neighbors or leaky roofs. The morning smelled of fresh bread from the bakery across the street. Her son started school and quickly made new friends. Every day he came home with stories about what he learned, his eyes glowing with excitement. Lena found small joys too. She cooked for the family, helped Chloe with her schoolwork, and sometimes took quiet walks in the park nearby. She loved watching the ducks float on the pond, reminding her of how life kept moving no matter what had happened before. Mr. Hamilton had changed more than anyone could have imagined. He was calmer, kinder, more patient. He no longer spent endless hours in his office. Instead, he was often seen sitting on the floor, helping Chloe build puzzles or painting beside her. People at his company even said he smiled more now. One evening, Lena was sitting on the porch when he came over. He carried 2 cups of tea and handed one to her. "You've made this place feel like home for all of us," he said. She smiled shyly. "You made it possible, sir." He shook his head. "You gave me back my family. I only gave you what you deserved." For a moment, they sat in silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The air was cool, and the faint sounds of laughter drifted from inside the house where the children played. "Do you ever think about that day?" he asked quietly. She nodded slowly. "Every day. Not because of fear, but because it reminds me how quickly life can change." He looked thoughtful. "That day changed me too. I used to believe power and money protected us, but it was you. A woman with nothing who saved everything I had." She looked at him and said softly, "Sometimes having nothing gives us the courage to risk everything." He smiled at that. "You should write a book someday." She laughed. "I barely write grocery lists." As months turned into years, their lives found a steady rhythm. Lena's son grew taller, and Chloe became like a sister to him. They went to the same school, shared secrets, and got into small mischiefs that made both parents laugh. But life, as always, had its surprises. One rainy afternoon, Mr. Hamilton fell seriously ill. It started with fatigue, then dizziness, and soon he was admitted to the hospital. The doctors said it was stress-related, but Lena could see it was more than that. It was years of overwork finally catching up. She stayed by his side at the hospital, making sure he ate, that he rested, that he didn't drown himself in business calls. Chloe stayed with her grandmother during that time, visiting every evening with her drawings. One night, when the hospital was quiet, he looked at Lena and said, "You know, I used to think I was the one who gave you a new life, but it's you who gave me mine." She didn't know how to respond. She just smiled softly and said, "We both got a second chance." When he recovered weeks later, he returned home weaker but more peaceful. He decided to step down from his company to spend time with his daughter. It was a bold decision, but one he never regretted. He began volunteering with Lena at the foundation they had started back home. Together, they helped other women like her, maids, widows, and single mothers who only needed someone to believe in them. The foundation grew quickly, and people began calling Lena the woman with a golden heart.